Good morning. This quiz goes with our first chapter of The Bluest Eye. And this video will help you to understand how Morrison uses language, which is the focus of the quiz. So, to start right out, you might recognize this set of sentences. Here is the house. It is green and white. It has a red door. It is very pretty. This is the description of the house that Dick and Jane live in. And in the last class, we discussed the ways that the master narrative of the American family, as a simple and straightforward ideal of a home in which father knows best and mother cares for the children and is always nice and laughing and smiling, and father is strong and smart, is where we begin with the book. We begin with that master narrative and that story of what the American family should look like. In contrast, however, we have the main story of the book, which is about Claudia and her sister and about Piccola Breedlove, a girl who is in a very failed American family. So when you look at the structure of the sentences, going back to Dick and Jane here is the house. It is green and white. It has a red door. It is very pretty. These are very simple type 1 sentences because this repetitive book targets an audience of early readers who will read the type 1 sentence, noun, to be verb, other noun, and will learn to read in a very simplistic and straightforward manner. In contrast, we have the complex reading that takes place in The Bluest Eye. Now, Dick and Jane's house is pretty, and in contrast, we have Morrison's sense of humor when you juxtapose the Dick and Jane house and Claudia's house. Our house is old, cold, and green. Now, this is also a type 1 sentence, so it's kind of mirroring or perhaps even mocking the Dick and Jane description, but we have the rhyming old, cold coming before green, and it's just kind of humorous to think of an old, cold greenhouse. Now, mother, father, Dick, and Jane live in the green and white house. They are very happy. And again, simple and straightforward master narrative of the home-owning middle class and very typical white American family. Well, I don't think they're really typical, but we're supposed to think that. That's the master narrative. And in contrast, another family that seems more realistic. And this is the description of the home in Claudia's house. She first tells us about being sick, and then she talks about how it really wasn't that painful after all. It was a productive and fructifying pain. Love, thick and dark as a log of syrup, eased up into that cracked window, and meaning that broken window in her bedroom in the old, cold greenhouse. I could smell it, taste it, sweet, musty, with an edge of wintergreen in its base, everywhere in that house. So we don't even know whether it's the love that we can smell and taste everywhere in the house or the Alaga syrup, but because the love is thick and dark like the Alaga syrup, it doesn't really matter to which she refers. And just think about the difference between this description of home and love and this description of happiness. Two greenhouses, one old and cold, one very happy, but very different. The next thing to consider about language has to do with conversation and speaking, and there is a beautiful parallel here that Morrison creates between the conversation that Claudia and her sister listen to among adults and a dance. So this metaphor is somewhat extended. Their conversation is like a gently wicked dance. Sound meets sound, curtsies, shimmies, and retires. Another sound enters, but is upstaged by still another. The two circle each other and stop. Sometimes their words move in lofty spirals, other times they take strident leaps, and all of it is punctuated with warm pulsed laughter like the throb of a heart made of jelly. The edge, the curl, the thrust of their emotions is always clear to Frida and me. We do not, cannot know the meanings of all their words, for we are 9 and 10 years old. So we watch their faces, their hands, their feet, and listen for truth in timbre. So here's what I would suggest is what that might look like.
Tadgadin nam tadikotaka janako kupatake kupatake tadin kataka janako tadin kartakatadin tangatadin tangatadina tangatadina tangatajana takadin nam tadikotaka janako kupatake tadin kataka janako tadin dana dana takada 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 dekada takada dikina dana dana takada 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 dekada takada dina takada dim takada dim takada takada dim talang kachong karakatom talang kachong karakatom talang kachong karakatom.
And that was from the Alvin Ailey Dance Company website, as you can see right here. I want to sign up for Alvin Ailey All Access because it's Alvin Ailey. It's amazing. So when you think about the description here of this passage, the edge, the curl, the thrust of emotion, the warm pulsed laughter, the mysterious dance, and the fact that because the sounds of words in that dance are not comprehensible to speakers of English, Frida and Claudia also don't understand what's being said, but they get the emotional sense of it. When you think about the adults discussing that woman whose family is coming to see her house and so who's not married, etc., that kind of gossipy, chatty, what do they think they're doing, comes through a bit in the dance. Whereas the Dick and Jane sounds of the dance, and we don't need to look at that yet, the Dick and Jane language, I would compare a little bit more to something like this. That dad gets lots of props for his dancing. However, it is a contrast, shall we say, to Alvin Ailey. And then I was also thinking intertextually about the language, the somewhat dialect-driven conversation that precedes Claudia's description of the language, combined with the description of the party by Paul Laurence Dunbar, also in a dance, jigs, cotillion, rills and breakdowns, cordials and a waltz or two, bless your soul, that music Wyndham, and dem people like to flew. Sorry that I read the dialect, but there it is. It's that kind of fast-paced and joyful language that is like a dance. I'm going to hope that this takes us right back to the text. Okay, sorry, this audiobook is a tiny bit annoying. So looking at the language of the dialogue that Claudia describes. What? Well, he run off with that trifling Peggy from Illyria, you know. One of old Slack Bessie's girls. That's the one. Well, somebody asked him why he left a nice, good churchwoman like Della. So you kind of get that fast pace and rhythmic timbre of their voice as they just go through the description of the people in the community. So going back to flashcards to help me focus a little bit more here. Again, we have this. See, mother. Mother is very nice. Mother, will you play with Jane? Mother laughs. Laugh. Mother, laugh. You can also do the robot while you read that. In contrast, the sentence from Morrison describing the adults and the mothers. When we trip and fall down, they glance at us. When we cut or bruise ourselves, they ask us, are we crazy? Get out of here, you're making noise. Are you crazy? Sorry, my children are spying through the glass French door at me and playing Nicki Minaj on my phone that they're not allowed to touch. So the conversation like a gentle dance. And then we go back to the description of the mother when Claudia gets very sick and vomits in her bed. My mother's voice drones on. She is not talking to me. She is talking to the puke. But she is calling it my name, Claudia. She wipes it up as best she can and puts a scratchy towel over the large, wet place. I lie down again. The rags have fallen from the window crack and the air is cold. I dare not call her back and am reluctant to leave my warmth. My mother's anger humiliates me. Her words chafe my cheeks and I am crying. I do not know that she is not angry at me, but at my sickness. I believe she despises my weakness for letting the sickness take hold. But by and by, I will not get sick. I will refuse to. So we can see here how even the mother's anger that the child misunderstands and isn't directed at her is a kind of toughness that we could say makes her stronger, because by and by, she says, she doesn't get sick. She refuses to get sick. She becomes stronger through this alternative parenting method. And in contrast, we have Jane's mother. Mother laughs. So this gets almost vapid and overly simplified. The complications of mothering and a child's relationship to her mother and the struggles of parenting and cleaning up puke really come through much differently here than they do with the very simple mother laughs. And again, we have the house, green and white. It has a red door. It is very pretty. Our house is old, cold, and green. Mother and father are very happy. But within Claudia's house, there is a productive and fructifying pain that goes up into that cracked window that we just read about a few pages before, with the mother angry at the sickness. Smell it, taste it, sweet, musty, with an edge of wintergreen in its base. Now, when I try to retype these Morrison sentences, it's really difficult because we have the placement of commas and the use of the dash instead of a comma that gives a rhythm to the sentence, but is very difficult for me to retype. I have to stop and look and stop and look. And I want to remind you oops, that's not what we're supposed to look at. That to make a dash, which is not a hyphen, do this. Two hyphens, no space between the word dash and which. And I'm going to say between the words embracing the dash. So I'm going a little bit backwards here. Now my dog's whining to get in. I really can't get a break. I think those are most of the flashcards that I made. Now, I'd like to look at the first line of the actual story just for the final comment that I would like to make about understanding language and how it works. Nuns go by as quiet as lust, and drunken men in sober eyes sing in the lobby of the Greek hotel. So there are several things going on right in that first sentence. It's the 1940s, so you picture a town with many immigrants, many of whom are Catholic or Irish or from other countries in Europe where there's a large Catholic population. And there are lots of nuns walking around the town because the nuns used to be the nurses and the teachers and very active and very visible in small towns, particularly in the 1940s. So when you think about nuns, think about the black dress with the black veil, the white around their face that's called the wimple, and you might think of a penguin. So we might expect to see a line like, the nuns shuffled along like penguins. That would be an example of a cliche. Instead, Morrison tells us the nuns go by as quiet as lust. And you'll notice the assonance between nuns and lust, the similarity in vowel sounds, which both sound very quiet as well. And nuns are kind of known for being quiet, however, not for lust. And lust is only quiet because it is the desire to fulfill a sexual need, which we don't associate with nuns. We associate nuns with virginity. So thinking about the nuns as quiet as lust, and the nuns whose lust has to be kept quiet, and drunken men, which is another one of those short U vowel sounds, is an almost humorous yet very soothing and soft depiction of the town. Now, the second thing we want to notice about the sentence is that we have drunken men and sober eyes singing, and eyes don't sing. We could say mouths sing, but not without a body attached. So when you have a part for a whole, I believe that's synecdoche. There are two kinds of metaphors, synecdoche and metonymy, and I will look up exactly which one I mean if you say eyes sing. Then we have to ask another question to understand this first line. Do the drunken men have sober eyes? Because we think of sober as meaning not drunk, so my first thought was there's drunken men and then there's sober people whose eyes are singing. But then I thought, well, maybe all the singers are drunk, but their eyes are sober, meaning sad, not meaning unintoxicated. So there you are, and we haven't gone through even the first sentence of this story, and we have a great deal to talk about with the way that the language works. And remember what Angela Davis said in the video, what do you see, who's there, what are the colors? And how Sonia Sanchez describes meeting Malcolm X with violets and castanets and the colors of the buildings. And think about language opening your imagination rather than telling us exactly what we expect. So that is all. I will post a quiz and ask you to think a little bit more about this language and what the video suggests about Morrison's language. And stay safe with these high winds and flooding. And possibly there will be another video and quiz coming along this weekend, but my children might not allow that. So enjoy Morrison and have a great day.